I'm Marielle Nicolas from Commissioner Gomez-Cordero's office, one of her aides, and we thank you for being here at her. Just an informational town hall for District 4 about Brightline. We had a call not too long ago with Christine and Jose, and they mentioned to the commissioner that they would be willing to do a meeting, and as with all meetings with our commissioner, he said absolutely. Any opportunity to inform the community. So we're here today, and we thank you for joining us. So we'll have the commissioner come up shortly, a presentation from Brightline, Jose and Christine, and then we'll jump into questions and answers. So we'll be taking the audience here's questions, and then also questions on our Facebook Live. But first, I'll pass it over to District 4 Commissioner Marielle Gomez-Cordero.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, my friends, for being here. Thank you, Darcy, and thank you to everyone that are here, and the staff, the Orange County staff, and all of them, and most important, the citizens, the residents that are here. Thank you for being here. Well, this is one of a lot of town halls that I have been doing. Every month I have one, and we have been covering everything about rent and COVID and job assistance and grants and money. And today we are going to talk about the Brightline. And this is important because this is a project that is coming and it's going to affect us one way or another, in a good way or a bad way, whatever it is. But it's important for you all to make the questions and have the answers directly from the people that are working on the project. So thank you for being here. And there are some cards in the front, like if you have any question after you finish and you still need to talk to me or we still need to do another meeting, I'm willing to bring it back. So thank you for being here and enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll now introduce our guests. We have Brightline here. We have Christine Kefauver. I hope I said that okay. And she is Senior Vice President of Corporate Development at Brightline. Oh, excuse me, please. Before I finish introducing you guys, I did want to mention that we have Gary Hutman here from MetroPlan. So thank you, Gary, for being here. And also Renzo Nastasi from Transportation Planning over at Orange County. So thank you, Renzo, for being here as well. And back to you guys now. We have Christine Kefauver. As I said, she is Senior Vice President of Corporate Development at Brightline. And Jose Gonzalez, the Executive Vice President of Florida East Coast Industries, the company that owns Brightline. So we'll now pass it over to them for the presentation.
So I'm going to hand up. So my name is Jose Gonzalez. Thank you. I am the Executive Vice President of Florida East Coast Industries. And I've been on this project since the very beginning. So I've been very fortunate to be 25 years in this company, seen it evolve into what we have today, and really seen what the collaboration of what we've done with the assets we have, and that's how Brightline got started. It all started with a conversation, and ultimately it evolved into this. So today's purpose is really to give a little bit of history for those who don't have the history. I'm always surprised how many people confuse us with Sunrail in South Florida with Tri-Rail, but really giving the public information and having an open dialogue is really the exercise today. So I wanted to start off by saying that just wanted to thank everybody for allowing us to do that. Can I have the next slide? And I can't forget, I want to thank Commissioner Gomez-Cordero. We've met on Zoom, and fortunately now we're all live and we can actually have these dialogues. But without her caring for the community and making sure that the community had the best information, we couldn't possibly do this. So thank you again, Commissioner, for allowing us to do this. Next slide. So really, when we started, we wanted to figure out what was our mission, and our mission was really to change up how people travel and looked at train travel around the U.S. and really create a disturbance, if you will, with transportation. So we really wanted to be a change for people to change their perspectives on transportation. And really that was our key mission, to do that. Next slide, please. And so really who we are, it started off we have an asset in Florida, but that asset allowed us to look at how peer cities around the country acted together. And that's really how the business started off, by taking an asset that we had and looking at how it could be better. And I was around in 2011 when, back then, Governor Scott gave the dollars back for the Tampa to Orlando high-speed rail. And that started our conversation. I was around a conference room table and said, how can we, as a private sector, create that disruption, and how can we accomplish that? Because his sort of call to action was, if it can be done right, it could be done by the private sector. And that's where we really started to have that public-private partnership discussion. And it started again with the Miami to Orlando. We looked at that segment because that's where our main assets were. But then we've also now expanded to other peer cities. We're working on a Los Angeles to Las Vegas route, and you can see on the map, there are other peer cities that make a lot of sense. So we're studying them, and as part of our business, one of the things that our CEOs up in New York say, it's really not a business if you can't grow it. And that's the purpose of us. We want to grow our business to really bring that sort of disruption in the market around the country. So I'm going to give you a little teaser video here that'll give you a little bit of background on what the company is. So if you want to play the video for us. So that little teaser video gave you a little glimpse of what it actually is as a system. And one of the things that when I did many presentations along and developed it, there were a lot of still video, still pictures. It's nice to see the actual system operating. And for those of you who haven't ridden it, and you find yourself down in South Florida, we will become operational again now in the fall. Take it, because it actually is, the thing I would hear is, it's not what I thought it was when people rode the train. They have a different experience of it. And that customer experience is something that we pride ourselves on. But it really is an important thing. Is when we first started it, we looked at just looking at Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, and Orlando. And what we learned from our customers is that they need to have additional points of connection. And we've grown into there where we've invested already with the system itself, a little bit, $2.something billion already. Ultimately, it's going to be like a $6 billion system, but it includes now stations in Aventura that was never contemplated. It sort of evolved from discussions with the community, Boca Raton, Port Miami, and then now in Central Florida, we're working on the Disney extension as well. But those all happen from having conversations like these. And as we expand here in Central Florida, we wanted to sort of have those conversations about additional opportunities. and those opportunities come with a lot of benefits for the community. And as you can see here, here's some statistics about the system. Again, it's a $6.4 billion investment. It's added already to date $3.5 billion for the GDP. It has about $2.4 billion in labor income, or close to $700 million in tax revenues to the state and the locals. Well over 10,000 jobs through 21, and of those 2,000 permanent jobs, and then about 3 million cars removed from the road, which is one of the best parts of the story. Is there's a great environmental benefit for our system. Next slide. And part of that story also includes the fact that we decided for this to be an all-American made system. So our trains are manufactured by Siemens, but out in California. And we actually send them down across the US, down to Florida. And they're built in California, but it takes about 40 different suppliers from 20 different states to supply the equipment for all the train systems. Oh, just one more. Okay. So part of that is, we're building a smarter system. And part of that is how we would actually interact with the customers and how those customers would tell us about their experiences. And part of that, next slide, is how we make those prosperous investments in the community, right? So these are the actual stations. And when we looked at the actual neighborhoods that we were at, we transformed all the different neighborhoods in a positive way. We started, as an example, in downtown Miami, we were in a CRA. So CRAs were typically for areas that were tougher to find developers to invest in, for companies to invest in. Well, we came in there and invested in that. But along the way, we had to partner up with the government to bring those changes, because nobody contemplated a huge rail station in the middle of downtown Miami. There wasn't a zoning code, there wasn't anything that was thought about like that. And apart with that, we also brought in not only the train station, but the TOD that came around with it. And so part of that story is how we partnered up with government and with the communities to really effectuate that change. And that change came in looking at different ways that land use is looked upon. And so we have these flagship stations. The same thing with the airport. Nobody ever contemplated a train coming into the airport like this. So when we worked with GOA, we had to really get creative how we intertwine and recreate a hub at GOA. And then we have the inline stations. And those vary from community to community. So we looked at what is important for Lauderdale is different than West Palm, is different than Boca and Aventura. So we really tailored the stations, although having the same thing, where it's not just a platform. A lot of people think of a train, you just think of a platform that's covered. Our stations actually have a lot more amenities because we're looking at a different way of the customer experience from train travel. And part of that is that investment in these stations and how they become an icon and sort of start a conversation about how we redevelop areas in these communities. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Christine. So I met Christine originally. She when I first, I feel like I've been doing this since day one. She was on the other side of the conversation. She was working for the public sector, and she was one of the public sector partners that's been in transportation for many years. And we started a conversation and got a lot of guidance of how this community looked at transportation. So it's great to have her on my side of the equation now. But the knowledge that she brought to this system as we expand here in Central Florida is invaluable. So with that, I want to introduce Christine to talk a little bit about the expansion that we're doing here in Central Florida.
Thank you, Jose. So as you mentioned, I work for Brightline, and I think yesterday was 3 whole months that I've worked with the team. But it's amazing as we're moving forward in the development of this program and working very closely to have a seamless system with Sunrail ultimately and other connections in the community. It's very important that we work in partnership. And not only as I work with the Orange County many years ago and the city of Orlando, one of my major tasks was helping Mayor Dyer and this community bring Sunrail to the community. So knowing as we sit right here in Meadowwoods, known Jose for a very long time as well, the importance of that regional connectivity and how that feeds into this system that is really intended and designed to connect cities. And once we get to those cities, we work closely with the local governments, transit agencies, rail providers, Tri-Rail, as well as working with the county down there to figure out ways to connect where people want to go. So if we can go to the next slide. So Jose talked about where we've been operational, right? And we talked about being operational again in October, later October, November of this year. So if you haven't already taken Brightline, look at that as an opportunity to get back on and experience that, because that's truly what it is, an experience. But we're also been busy, not only making improvements in the original corridor, but going ahead and building from West Palm Beach to Orlando International Airport. So if you've had an opportunity to drive out along the beach line, you might see some construction going on just south of the beach line, going towards Cocoa Beach. And that is Brightline. We're working out there every single day, and as Jose mentioned, the number of jobs in the community, during COVID, we've been able to continue to employ about 1,000 people a day constructing that. So that's happening in real time in our community, looking for getting to the airport. And we have a current picture just a couple weeks ago of what's being constructed at the airport as we speak in that infrastructure. We'll get there around the fourth quarter of next year, 2022, so working through that. And then we have some time that we need to work with the Federal Railroad Administration, and that is the governing body, to make sure that this brand new railroad is indeed safe for the consumer. And we go through and we burn the hours on the train, just like Sunrail did for the community when it was coming on board. So we follow the same protocol. Revenue service beginning in 2023. So can we go to the next slide? So one other area I really wanted to talk about, less than 5 miles away from this point is our vehicle maintenance facility. And that is where the entire system, our trains, are going to be maintained on a day-to-day basis. And as Jose mentioned, when I worked for Mayor Dyer, when Brightline at the time made the investment to say we are going to put our vehicle maintenance facility a little bit west of the airport, I was so excited as someone in this community to say that means that Brightline is ultimately envisioned to go to Tampa, because why would they put it west of the airport, right? So that was visionary and aspirational. And so that investment is underway. So if you go out off of Boggy Creek Road, you may be able to see some of this. The site work's been done, the building's being erected, but it's state-of-the-art work for that building. And the more I've learned over the last few months is it's capable of doing so much more than just maintaining Brightline vehicles. We know that Sunrail travels through this corridor. They have ultimately a 61-mile system that they're building. Their maintenance facility is up in Sanford. If there's a need to have duplication of that system, our vehicle maintenance facility can maintain those vehicles as well, if the community so chooses. We're just setting the table, right, for additional opportunities. And the same with Amtrak. So they all use the same gauge, and we can be very interoperable in helping one another out. But what it also will be, the future home of about 160 high-skilled jobs. So this is where our conductors will be, a lot of our technicians, etc. So as Commissioner, you think about jobs for your community. Right here in the backyard of Meadowwoods, we're looking to build one of those economic centers as well. And we're working closely with Seminole State, and we'll be working with Valencia to align some of that talent and skills to that facility. So that's right here in our own backyard, literally, as we sit here at Meadowwoods. So next slide, please. So once, that's the airport up there in the upper right-hand corner. So now we're going to talk about that next phase, which I think you all are very interested in hearing more about this evening. And that is getting ultimately over here to Tampa. About the community, the state, got to a record of decision. And that's the federal government's way of saying, we are going to partner with you, the community, to build a major investment. And that was high-speed rail connecting Orlando International Airport to Tampa. At the time, the governor didn't feel as if there was enough assurances that there would not be additional public sector investment, and he said at this time, no thank you. But it means that the demand didn't go away. There are parts of I-4 between the I-Drive area all the way down to Polk County that are some of the most dangerous of the interstate system. And if you're doing business in Tampa and you live in Orlando or vice versa, it's so unpredictable of the travel time to get from point A to point B because of the level of congestion. We know that there are a great deal of people traveling that corridor, and we see that as another opportunity to connect the communities. Recently, I did some research on the economy, right? Where are we as an economic engine for not only the state of Florida, but the United States and the world? When you look at the economy connecting Miami to Orlando to Tampa, just based on the gross domestic product, we are the 23rd largest economy when combined in the world. So this train begins to connect those centers that help the economy run and actually where people want to be and travel to and from. We just help facilitate that along the way. So it's important to be mindful that we become part of the backbone of the collective system that helps that mobility and folks getting around. So we're excited to be part of that collective solution. We're talking to folks in Tampa. We like around the Union Station area is really where we're looking, because clearly from 2010, 2011, when the decision was to pull back on being on I-4, more improvements have been made in the interstate system. And so we're working very closely with our partners at the DOT to co-locate and be a partnership there as well. So that gives you kind of literally the roadmap for our system moving westwardly. So we can go to the next. So here's the schedule, because I know a lot of people are like, well, I want that train built yesterday, or haven't we been talking about this for way too long? So this gives you an idea of our schedule. Right here is where we are in the dotted line, kind of finishing out the second quarter of 2021. We're very much in the planning phase of this, where a lot of conversations are going on about alignment and where we're connecting in our communities, and then starting to better understand how we implement the program. Some of this is getting designed as well as we go through, because the I-4 corridor is what the I-4 corridor is, and we're working closely with them. When you see this item on the NEPA study, that goes back to the Federal Railroad Administration is the agency that we work closely with to make sure that we go through the Environmental Protection Agency, making sure that we understand any impacts that may happen as part of the construction of our project and the long-term implementation. So it's really important to understand what that is and communicate that. So in the fall of this year, as you see here, we'll be back out to the community and having workshops, particularly where we have stations and along the way of the alignment. So if you're interested, we'll make sure that we get you more information when we come out to do that. Along the way, you see a great deal of work being done on design, and that's our engineers being better understanding what the subsurface is, what utility conflicts may be, what our best alignment may be, etc., and designing it so that we can permit it and then go into construction. You see that as two phases: Orlando International Airport to the Disney area, and then Disney on to Tampa. So we kind of broke that next line into two segments, and some of that's happening at the same time. So lots of work by the team. So if we go to the next slide. So I think you saw a little bit of the GOA intermodal facility. I'm gonna take a little bit of luxury here. Actually, when the GOA, the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority, and the airport were looking at the expansion of the airport, they said, we should be that intermodal hub for this community. And when they looked to expand that south terminal, they said part of that needs to be rail connectivity. So they were visionary and said, we're gonna have 4 envelopes for transportation to come into the airport. A high-speed rail option, a commuter rail option, both their shuttle, what gets them back and forth to the terminal, and then a future technology to be determined, whether it be light rail, bus rapid transit, whatever it is. They reserved the envelope and said, when the community is ready to have that conversation, we're ready to host it. And we want to be that intermodal connectivity right there at the airport. So we're excited about that. And we know that the community has studied getting Sunrail to the airport, and we want to be part of help facilitating that conversation as well. So if you've not been out by the airport lately, take a look. It's a pretty fantastic building, and actually that's where we have the luxury of being able to go to work every day. So, next one. So, this just gives you an idea of the graphics of getting us into Tampa. So, as you can see, there's the I-4 corridor up to the north or upper right-hand corner, and working our way that channel site, Ybor City area. So you can see where we touch down in Tampa, and we're working with the city of Tampa and CARD to look at that distribution and connectivity to make sure that it's part of their fabric as well. So next slide. So now let's zoom back. Let's come back to this general area and connectivity. So Brightline and Sunrail platforms at OIA, we see that as very much a seamless transition from, if you live in this community and Meadowwoods area, to get to the airport and transition there. I live up in College Park, whether you live in Point Siena. Our goal is to help facilitate and be part of the conversation for the community when they're ready to have it, that Sunrail can absolutely use the corridor from the Meadowwoods area right around here to the airport to get in. And so we've been in some initial conversations on helping to facilitate that conversation. Brightline, just so you know, we're planning to operate on hourly service. Sunrail can operate up to 15 minutes an hour. So much more rapid. That's a distribution of trips for commuters as well as other types of trips. Brightline tracks, as I mentioned, if it's a regional priority, we can help facilitate those trips to the airport on Sunrail as well. And we think about that also as Brightline, the airport is also host to 15 to 18,000 jobs. So there are a lot of people who work there, and this can become access to that, as well as the number of, I looked it up on their site, 89 US cities and 24 international cities have direct access out of OIA. So I think we're very fortunate to have that gem right here in our backyard. So we talked about the vehicle maintenance facility, and we also are working with the Commuter Rail Commission, because for us to go east to west, there's a little bit of shared track, a little bit less than a mile, on the 61-mile corridor Sunrail that Brightline would look to share some of that. So we're working through the details of that connection point, etc. So, next slide. So this gives you an idea. Just make sure that you see that the Brightline is there in yellow, kind of going across the screen. I want to make sure you don't misinterpret the B squares. That's not where stations are. That's just designating what the line is. And here you see north-south is Sunrail. And this is that 8-foot mile that we talked about, where they would look to share. But then, next slide, the opportunity that we talked about is now the potential of a future phase of Sunrail being able to use the same tracks that Brightline is building. So we're excited, and then even once that's done, if the community still says we want something like light rail coming out the south, there's still enough right-of-way working with the Orlando Utilities Commission to accommodate that. So we're really trying to be similar to the way that the airport has always thought, what is the art of the possible and how do we help facilitate that along the way? So we're making sure that we're staying mindful of what the community vision may be for the future and accommodating that in our plans as we go through design. Next slide. So, you know, if it were easy, it'd be done by now, right? I mean, I think that's kind of what we're thinking. So as we move forward, we're really trying to think through and be part of a conversation in this community where we're recognizing that there are real opportunities for this Brightline as we're connecting our cities, and there are also some challenges in the community. And we're not undervaluing what those are, but what we want to do is be part of a community conversation to help resolve some of those. And where can we agree and where is it much better for that collaboration? So we're definitely working through those. Absolutely, intermodal connectivity, very high on opportunities of what's happening as part of this collective conversation. Sunrail operations, they're looking at, you know, right now they operate 30-minute headway, 1 hour off peak and so forth. They have the capacity to go to 15-minute headway when the community is ready and the investment's made. Will absolutely look to be interoperable in the way that we go through our planning. It's exciting. I was listening in on the Metro Plan board meeting this week, and clearly Meadowwoods has been a huge success when it comes to Sunrail and exceeding the demand with the parking and so forth. So there's an opportunity for additional planning to go as part of that redevelopment and the plans there. We'd love to be part of that conversation so that we can collaborate. The market demand, what happens in this community, I know that the transit-oriented development plans and working with the county on what that looks like moving forward. Once again, if we can be helpful in any of that and recognizing a contribution of an interstate rail system, we're very much interested in it. We know that there's some utility issues we have to work through, traffic operations, getting people, they start often, their trip is either a pedestrian or a car, and knowing the impacts that it may have. But we also, Brightline's future vision very much includes the connectivity for this community and making sure that that's happening at the right places and at the right time. And as Jose mentioned just a few minutes ago, there were key stations that were built in early phases and additional stations that were built along the way as the community had the conversation and demand was apparent that it was the right decision both for the community and for Brightline. The Aventura is an example of that. So we've got some next steps. We're finalizing some agreements with the Commuter Rail Commission as well as the Florida Department of Transportation, because we're working in partnership with each of them. As I mentioned earlier, we'll have some workshops in the fall out in the community where it'll be more than just this open house environment. We'll really look at some data and better understand the maps, but we'll be very thoughtful, work with the Commissioner's office to make sure that we get invitations out. And we're always eager to continue to engage with the community and talk through what some of the opportunities are and challenges are. So we really do want to be part of the fabric of this community as we help be in partnership on that mobility side. So, Jose talked a lot about the economic impact. We talked a lot about jobs. This is a transportation, mobility opportunity. With that becomes opportunities for development in communities by developers. And it too has an economic impact, so it's jobs. It's kind of creating the foundation for transit-oriented development, as well as, we're contributing back to the communities as part of our tax base as well. So with that, I think we've got just one more. If you'd like more information about Brightline, I know that we're on Facebook Live, I guess, right now. So anybody would like to get more information, www.gobrightline.com to learn more about Brightline. And there's my email address as well if people have additional questions or want additional information that they are not getting on the website. So with that, that concludes our more formal presentation, but I know that we really want to be open to answer any questions both for Facebook Live as well as